Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LGBTQIA podcast with me, Paige. I'm the LGBTQ officer for the Aston Student Union and the host of this podcast. Now, today we're doing Eyes for Intersex, and it's just me. And you might be thinking, hold on a second, Paige. Normally, you have somebody to interview. They represent people at Aston who are part of the community. And that's true. And I did put out an advertisement to get some interest to see if somebody who was intersex would like to come on the podcast. And we didn't get any takers. And that's totally fine because I can only begin to assume that being intersex is maybe not something that you potentially are willing to share with the internet yet, because frankly, it's not talked about that much. And that's totally fine because here today we can still learn a little bit of something about what it means to be intersex, and hopefully do a little bit of good and start those conversations, which mean that people who are intersex don't feel like they have to shy away necessarily. Hopefully we can do the work here that means next time somebody might think, actually, yeah, I think I do feel ready to go and share my story. So key thing to take away, kids, I'm not intersex. My experience does not reflect that of an intersex person, and so everything I say here is through the lens of just a cisgender person who knows a little bit about the community and is trying to do their best to do a bit of educating. So now we've got the housekeeping out of the way, let's get on with it. Do a little bit of editing of the questions. Those of you who've watched the past 5 will be thinking, how are we going to do this? Don't worry, I think fast on my feet. So I am going to start by answering what made me happy today, because I personally think it's a really nice way to enter into the podcast, practicing a bit of gratitude. And today I'm happy for 2 things. First of all, the sun is shining and the weather is glorious, and I'm a summer baby, so I'm delighted about that. And second of all, I have submitted the rough draft for my introduction and methods for my final year project, which is just, how are we here? How? So I'm grateful for those 2 things today. So the next question on my list that I normally ask the delightful guest is, what does being enter here mean to you? So in this case, what does being intersex mean? Now, obviously, I can't say what it means to me, but what I can do is I can use my brain and my ability to type into Google and go find somebody out there who talks about being intersex. And I stumbled across somebody called Gender Fender Bender on Instagram. They're fantastic. I would definitely recommend a follow. And they defined what it meant to be intersex as they are intersex. And I thought it was really nice. And I'm just going to paraphrase that here. So they said being intersex is essentially a variation in a sex characteristic. And this could be anything from hormones to chromosomes to reproductive anatomy and to genitalia. This means that intersex people naturally live outside of the sex binary. And so if I've lost you a little bit here, let's think about this. The male sex binary is the XY chromosome, for instance, and testosterone and that kind of stuff. And the female binary is the XX chromosome and estrogen and all that crazy stuff. But people who are intersex, those components of their anatomy don't necessarily line up with the traditional binary that we know as male and female. So that's really interesting, because a lot of people get very het up on this idea that there are only 2 known genders, and intersex people exist, which in and on itself proves there are more than 2 genders. It's very, very interesting. So that's kind of what it is, the kind of textbook definition of what it is to be intersex, and that is from the words of an intersex person who, like I say, definitely recommend giving a follow. What do I wish more people knew about being intersex? Now, this is through my lens, and my lens is an advocate for the community. I think something to be aware of is that it's 2% of the population. So as many people as there are who are ginger, there are people who are intersex. So if you cast your mind back to a time you were sat in a classroom or you had a year group cohort and as many ginger people as you knew, there were people who were intersex. How fascinating is that? It's common, and yet for some reason these aren't conversations we're having or things that we know about. But we know about gingers, so I just find that very, very interesting. And something else I wanted to cover, that's just, it's a bit of a linguistic challenge now. You might want to get a notepad and pen if this kind of lingo is a bit outside of your realm of what you understand. But some people do think, or may ask, why are intersex people part of the community, right? And so why are they part of this LGBTQI plus community, right? It's because although intersex people can be cisgender, which means that you are the same, you identify with the gender that you were given at birth, and they can be heterosexual, so they can be attracted to the opposite sex exclusively. They have the same, because of their experiences and because of the societal binary to gender, they experience similar things to other people within the community. So these gender norms and these societal expectations of what gender should be, it implicates them in the same way that it might implicate a person, or not the same way, but in a similar way that it might implicate a person who is transgender or might implicate a person who is queer. And so that is why intersex people are considered part of the community. And also, just to say that you can be a cisgender, straight, intersex person and still be part of the community. At least that's how I feel anyway, as somebody who represents the community at Aston, because the struggles that these people face deserve the support, the same support that the struggles that a transgender person might face. And so that's something that it's worth bearing in mind. And if I've just confused the heck out of you by saying like cisgender and transgender and all this, maybe walk away and have a quick look at these terms and start using them in your language, and it will become second nature. So yeah, I wish people knew that being intersex was more common than they thought, and I hope people know that intersex people are considered part of the community, and I hope my explanation makes it clear why that is. So, if I could change anything in the world right now that wasn't COVID, what would it be? As we're talking about being intersex, and there isn't someone to be an advocate for intersex people who identifies as intersex here today, I want to bring up this conversation about intersex people and how they are treated like they have a medical condition. Now, we touched a little bit on this with these ideas. So society has this idea of gender, right? And it's man and it's woman, and that is it. Okay? So when you introduce somebody who is born into this world completely healthy, completely happy, but their makeup isn't necessarily binary to one or the other, people don't like that. And there's no reason to why. It doesn't make any sense, because this person, this child can grow up to be a perfectly healthy, happy human, and there is no need for who they are to be treated like a medical condition. But it is. And this means sometimes that people, before they are even able to give consent themselves, undergo treatments and therapies to convert them to one or the other gender. And bear in mind that this is not life-saving surgery. This is not life-saving therapies. This person could live as they were completely happily without them. So why are we treating these people, these intersex people, like they have a medical condition? You know, we need to change the language here. We need to change our approach to these things. Intersex people are people who exist outside of the gender binary. That's it. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, this is a lot for me to take in because people are either male or female, I think the one thing to remember is that gender and how we perceive gender as male or female is literally just a construct. It's a historical construct that we've written as people. And so if we've created it, we can undo it. And then by undoing that, we then allow these people who are intersex to live happily and safely within society without being treated like they have a medical condition. So this is interesting, and it's a historical thing and a historical influence, which, you know, History Month podcast. Apparently, and this is just from a bit of reading I've done, the reason why intersex people are treated as if they have a medical condition is because people were historically afraid that if a child was born intersex, they were more likely to grow up to be gay or transgender. Now, gay people who are intersex exist, and transgender people who are intersex exist. But my first thing would just be like, so who cares? Who cares if these young people, if this child who's born is more likely to be gay or transgender? Why is that a problem? Why is that a problem to begin with? That would be my first statement. And then secondly, it's not true, is it? You can't just be like, well, this person's born intersex, so they're definitely going to be transgender or they're definitely going to be gay. It's ridiculous. It's the historical reasoning behind this is just a bit ridiculous, I think. That's some food for thought for you, I guess. Just something to think about. We're really getting out here with these big thought ideas right now, but it's important when it's about people's lives and people who have been just neglected by society for something they have no control over. You've got to start to unlearn these processes and learn ones that are more inclusive. Something I did want to touch on is that there might be some people going, well, okay, hold on though. How can an intersex person be transgender? Can they be transgender? And this is something that the Gender Fender Bender looked at, and I'm just kind of going to regurgitate what they said. So this is all credit where credit is due. The meaning of cisgender is you have the gender that you're assigned at birth, and that's the one that you identify with. Me, I'm a cisgender person because at birth, somebody looked at my anatomy and was like, that's a female. And I grew up, and internally in myself, I was like, I am a female, I am a woman. And so 2 and 2 together, cisgender. Transgender means when you get assigned a gender at birth, predominantly based on your anatomy, but that isn't who you are or how you feel, and you transition that gender and it is different to the one that you're assigned at birth. So if an intersex person at birth is assigned a gender, let's say for instance their parents or their doctor say, well, this is the girl, to the most part, it's all a construct, it's ridiculous. We're going to say that this person's a girl. This person grows up and they are aware that they're intersex, but being a woman is something that they identify with and that fits them. That makes that intersex person cisgender. On the other hand, if we have this person who is given the gender of girl, who is intersex, but who grows up and does not identify with being a girl at all, maybe they identify with being non-binary, maybe they identify with being a man, either way, their gender will transition, and this is where we get the term transgender. So I'm hoping that clarifies things up for you. It's not as black and white as if you're intersex you're this, if you're cisgender you're that. It's not how it works. So I'm really hoping that means something to you, and if anything, you just take away some new linguistic tools that you can use in your conversations you have with people, because just by using these correct linguistic terms, we're more inclusive. If a person who is intersex hears you using these terms, they might think this person has done their reading, they understand what it means, they understand the gender binary, they understand this is a safe space. So by listening and understanding this, hopefully we have that effect. The next question is normally, what is the best part about being intersex? Now, obviously, I can't answer that. But what I can say is when I was doing my research, I found this incredible group, and it's called Interact Youth. And it's essentially a group of 13 to 29-year-olds who are intersex, it's global, and you can just go online and you can join that group and just be with a community of people who understand what you're going through. And the reason I brought this up is because, first of all, it's an excellent resource. But second of all, when I asked other people on this podcast, what is the best thing? Quite often they were just like, it's the community. I love the community. And so I'm hoping that this rings true for intersex people, and that, well, I mean, this Interact Youth just looks, it looks really just like a safe space, and that's what people need. And just if you were interested and you wanted to have a look, or if you're intersex and you'd like to join, it's called interactadvocates.org. Go and take a look. If you're 13 to 29, it seems like a really happy space. And like I said, it's international, so it doesn't matter where you are in these COVID times, it's global. So the final question that I normally ask guests on the podcast is, what is your favorite thing about being part of the Aston LGBTQ plus community? Obviously, I can't answer that on behalf of intersex people, but what I can say, as somebody who is, well, is position of power the right term? I'm the LGBTQ plus officer for Aston students. And what I can say in that position is that our community at Aston is completely loving and completely accepting and welcoming. And if you are an intersex person who's happened to watch this, who has engaged with the community or hasn't, who has told us about the fact that you're intersex or hasn't, just know that you are so welcome in any shape or form. You're so welcome to come and join us, to come and, well, join us. It's all online, but the community welcomes you, and we'd be really, really blessed and privileged to have you there. So thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry this one was a little bit different to normal. I'm really excited for this one to be watched, because I think it's incredibly important. All of these podcasts have been important, but the intersex community, I don't think, gets enough representation and enough screen time as they deserve. So I'm hoping this did a little bit in pushing education and knowledge out there into the universe about what it means to be intersex. Thank you. Bye.